It's a common misconception that Heath Ledger's final film is 2008's The Dark Knight. But when he tragically passed away in 2008, he was actually involved in the filming of Terry Gilliam's The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, a wild fantasy film that centers around a traveling theater troupe whose leader made a bet with the devil. It's filled to the brim with symbolism and beautiful imagery that is kind of perfect for the type of movie that I like to discuss here on the channel. Dr. Parnassus is also a very personal film to director Terry Gilliam. He claimed that it's meant to be autobiographical, and a tale of an aging man with a vivid imagination in a world that does not listen anymore. Gilliam was in his 60s and was worried about his projects not going anywhere. There's literally a documentary about one of his films being in development hell. It's crazy. But there's something kind of eerie, or tragically poetic even, about an aging man worrying about his mortality and putting that to film, and then one of the major players in the film dies at the age of 28. But one of the main themes that the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus tries to convey is that storytelling is the thing that sustains the universe. Gilliam said, "I love this idea of an ancient traveling show, offering the kind of storytelling and wonder that we used to get to people who were just into shoot-'em-up action films." Isn't it weird that even in 2009, directors were fighting against the Hollywood machine like they are now? Gilliam teamed up with Charles McCown, whom he co-wrote his film Brazil and the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And this was the first film since then that he storyboarded himself. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is ultimately infamous for being the film Heath Ledger was involved in at the time of his death, resulting in a doomed production turning into one of the craziest third acts I've ever seen, including 4 actors playing the same character, and ending with a title card that reads, "A film from Heath Ledger and Friends." Not only is the film beautiful, but the journey to completing the film after Ledger's death is beautiful as well. There's a lot to get into and a lot to break down, so step into the mirror and follow me into The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. So I'm fighting a lot of chest congestion, so please bear with me. Our story begins in London, England. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is a traveling theater troupe that looks way out of place for our story, but we'll come to find out why it makes sense that it's out of place. So my eyes are automatically drawn to the pyramid with the eye on it, which is a very common symbol among conspiracy theorists. The circumstances surrounding this film, plus the fact that the devil himself is literally in the movie, have led people to believe that there's a lot of evil in this movie. I've kind of debated with myself on how I'd like to approach this stuff, and I decided I'll point out some of the stuff, and if you choose to believe in the Illuminati symbolism, by all means, go ahead. Personally, I'm just here for the film analysis side of it, but like I said, it's essentially the elephant in the room. A lot of the stage wagon thing is aged and worn down, but there are better images of it online. Carol Cuppis was responsible for the graphic design, with ideas given to her by Terry Gilliam himself. I tried to dig up some clarity on what the images symbolize to Terry Gilliam, because even before anyone had the opportunity to read the script, he had the idea for the wagon, and his early sketches pretty much made it into the film. But yeah, feast your eyes on this satanic goldmine. Out pops Anton, played by Andrew Garfield. Anton is playing Mercury, the messenger of the gods, tasked with delivering a message from the gods to the mortals. He's inviting bargoers into the mind of Dr. Parnassus, played by Christopher Plummer. Parnassus apparently has the ability to open your minds and transport you. Looking at this in an autobiographical sense, Parnassus is just an exaggerated version of Terry Gilliam himself, a man luring an audience into his imaginations. His daughter Valentina, played by Lily Cole, is introduced, and Percy, played by Vern Troyer, quite literally farts onto the screen. The scene is a great bit of exposition because 1, Valentina is chased by a drunk guy, which foreshadows her ongoing conflict with men wanting possession of her throughout the film, and 2, it shows us how the Imaginarium works, which at face value is just a metallic prop that's supposed to be a mirror, but when you step inside, it reflects your imagination and desires. Here, after Valentina fights the guy off, he finds himself in a pit of beer bottles, reflecting his desire for alcohol. He's transported through this weird alternate world. Many of the Imaginarium scenes were inspired by famous paintings, which we'll get into. Our drunk friend screams that he'll never drink again at the sight of these large jellyfish, and he's dropped onto a thumbtack representing a small man against a large battle. Parnassus presents him with 12 steps, representing the 12-step program, and he says with dedication, the heights are attainable. Just then, he's presented by Mr. Nick's Lounge, where he is offered a drink. He gives in and says he'll have just one drink. The bar explodes, and back in the real world, Parnassus claims that Mr. Nick won and he lost. The easy gratification of a quick drink outweighed his desire for a difficult self-fulfillment. We will later come to find out Mr. Nick, played by Tom Waits, is the devil, and one of my favorite depictions of the devil at that. Also, it's clear that when you die or disappear in the Imaginarium, you disappear for real. At a carnival, a kid with an annoying yelling family sneaks into the Imaginarium. Anton follows him in, and we see the kid's imagination creates this Dr. Seuss-type world with bubbles and colors. Visual effects supervisor John Paul Daughtry said they wanted every journey into the Imaginarium to look different because everyone's imagination is different. This led to them pretty much having to make 9 different movies in one. And they took inspiration from things like Mary Poppins because no one was really doing anything like that at the time. Keep in mind, this was like the time of like Avatar and Transformers. Parnassus appears as a hot air balloon and yells at the boy to leave before the kid shoots it down. Luckily, somehow he's able to get out, and it seems as if they just play it off as some theater magic to just get him to leave. There's a big difference in how Parnassus treats Valentina and Anton after sneaking into the Imaginarium. Valentina gets scolded, and Anton gets praised. There's this weird wanting or desire for either Valentina or power over Valentina throughout the movie. Even Anton here calls her scrumptious. And Mr. Nick is seen peeping on her as she's looking at a family magazine. We also get the vibe that she just wants a normal life and a normal family because she stops and stares at a picture of a normal family. And one of our future Tonys are staring back at her, which will make sense later on. Mr. Nick is really amping it up here and taunting Parnassus here, saying that his daughter is about to be 16 and all his. What's kind of eerie is that for his role of the Joker, Heath Ledger took a lot of inspiration from Tom Waits. And here is Tom Waits playing the devil in Ledger's final film.
I have a growing level of popularity throughout the intercontinental United States.
These cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you.
Very weird. Mr. Nick isn't the only one wanting Valentina because Anton suggests that he could only live a normal life with her. And since she's always talking about wanting a normal life, they should just do it. While some of the undertones could be taken in a weird way, I took it as this movie is the fear of a parent losing a child as they grow up. Valentina mentions the age of consent and not being under anyone's control, and Parnassus scolding her for going into the Imaginarium and praising Anton for it could just imply that he just doesn't like not having control over his daughter. He even tries to have Valentina keep saying that she's 12 when she's turning 16, and he keeps a bell on her ankle to know where she's at. The deal that Parnassus made with Mr. Nick granted him immortality, which he later found out was a curse. Centuries ago, Parnassus was a monk in the Himalayas, and he was met by Mr. Nick. In a flashback, we see their sanctuary is on a snowy mountain, and on top of an elephant with a pyramid and the all-seeing eye on it. Truly just something I've never seen before, like I don't even know how you would get up here. As Parnassus is telling the story about a hooded rider, one comes to visit them, and it's Mr. Nick. These monks are given the job of telling this story because it sustains life, and without it, the universe would cease to exist. And Terry Gilliam struggles to get the film made. I think he might have felt like his world was ending because he could not get his stories out into the world either. And look, if you wanted to put the tinfoil hats on, you could say that Gilliam sold his soul to the devil to get his movies made, blah blah blah. Like I said, I'll present some of this stuff, but I don't necessarily believe all this stuff. Mr. Nick doesn't believe that the universe would cease to exist and closes their mouths. A bird, which Parnassus claims is a messenger, poops on Mr. Nick, and Parnassus sees this as a sign. A sign that someone, somewhere, is telling a story, and that is stopping the world from ceasing to exist. Once again, if we look at this in the autobiographical sense, if Terry Gilliam could not get his movies made or tell his stories, more writers and more directors will continue to make movies, and the world would continue. Parnassus then made a deal with Mr. Nick. The first to attract 12 disciples would be the winner. While Mr. Nick would use danger and fear to gather followers, Parnassus would use imagination. From the paintings, it seems like Parnassus never really stopped doing what he's currently doing. He has the weird vehicle and stage setup, and even a dwarf in the costume like he does now. Mr. Nick ended up tricking Parnassus and letting him win, and for that, he got immortality. But times change, and eventually no one would want to hear stories from Parnassus. And what's the point of living forever if no one cares? The vehicle stops and cuts this story short, and Valentina complains that Parnassus never finishes his stories. Once again, is Gilliam out here venting about not being able to complete his movies? Parnassus sends Valentina out, and he picks up the Hanging Man tarot card, which coincidentally was in my last video on Exorcist 3. The Hangman card typically means surrender, letting go, new perspectives, being suspended in time, among other things. The innocent mind of Anton claims to see a silhouette of a dancing man on the river, but Valentina sees it as someone hanging from under the bridge. It's bizarre that the first time we see Heath Ledger's character Tony is when he's hanging from a bridge with a pyramid on his head. Anton is lowered down to free him, and he has wings on like he's some kind of guardian angel. So, Anton is able to revive Tony, and he spits out a gold pipe. I doubt it would work in real life, but I guess the gold pipe stops your trachea from closing and allows you to continue breathing while hung. But, I mean, it's a movie about an Imaginarium in a mirror, so I'll just forgive it. Valentina decides to bring Tony with them, who is unconscious after smacking his head, but is still alive. Mr. Nick is watching along. I love how the devil is just casually chilling in the background in a lot of this movie. So Tony comes to eventually, and I can't overstate how much I love this wagon that they drive. There are so many crazy details, like little compartments where Percy sleeps. Speaking of Percy, he confronts Tony for not being appreciative of them saving his life. Anton confronts him in this kind of deer-looking thing, and Tony just thinks it's some weird stuff that they're into, but we don't judge around here. I guess if there was anything I didn't like about this movie, something about the lighting in this scene feels off. Like, it looks like it was filmed on a stage. But we find out that Tony claims to not remember who he is or what happened to him. Heath Ledger is really nailing this paranoid thing that he's doing here. He also seems to take a liking to Valentina, so once again, another man is after her. Anton found this, whatever this is, in his pocket, which happens to be on the hangman card Parnassus turned earlier. Parnassus recognizes the red symbols on Tony's head and thinks that Tony was sent by Mr. Nick. So they pretty much implied that the pyramid with the eye is indeed a demonic symbol. Parnassus is also wearing a coat with the devil on it, implying that the devil is always around him. He thinks that Mr. Nick is making another wager with him, and that he could possibly save Valentina. Tony joins the group as a member of the theater, and it's great how out of place this wagon looks in the parking lot of a hardware store. It's kind of surrounded by modern vehicles. Tony is given the mask of the Capitano, and is given the job of selling tickets by Valentina. However, Parnassus has had too much to drink and isn't really able to perform and is falling asleep on stage. Valentina has come up with the name George for Tony because we don't yet know who he is. It comes from the Greek word Georgios, which translates to husbandman. Tony brings in a group of people to watch the show, so technically he did his job at selling tickets, but we learn he's a bit of a con man because he claims Parnassus had a cold, but still went on to try to perform. On top of that, he says that Valentina is sick and needs surgery when he's asked for refunds. And viewers get 2 free tickets if you buy a ticket at half price. What a deal. And it somehow works. Anton is the only one who sees anything wrong with Tony trying to scam these people out of their money, or maybe he's just jealous because Valentina has seemed to fall in for him. But this con artist trait of Tony's is something very important to note. Mr. Nick is back to harass Parnassus with an alarm clock while he's drunk with a migraine. There's something very ironic about the devil being on his shoulder telling him that he shouldn't drink. It's a nice touch to have Mr. Nick kill a fly swarming around him because in some religions, flies are a sign of a demonic presence. Mr. Nick reveals that Tony Shepard is not one of his guys like Parnassus thought. He runs a charity, and Mr. Nick doesn't trust Tony. Mr. Nick gives Parnassus one more bet to save Valentina. The first to 5 souls wins, but he only has 2 days. Parnassus is still convinced that Tony was sent for some reason because of the hangman card from earlier. Tony finds a newspaper with his face on it, saying disgraced head of a charity is missing. So the plot thickens with this guy. Having him wear a mask during the show is a nice way of making sure that no one in the audience recognizes him. But the fact that Tony just throws the paper in the fire implies that he does know who he is, and he's been lying. Parnassus gives him a weird hat, and he claims that he can read his mind. Percy's screaming at him to shut up is hilarious. Parnassus pulls the name Tony Shepard that he got from Mr. Nick, and claims that he's using an ancient technique, so Parnassus is somewhat of a con man himself. Valentina is impressed that Tony did charity work, but Percy questions why someone involved in charity would end up hung under a bridge, which is a fair question. Anton takes the gold pipe flute thing from earlier that Tony coughed up and plays Beethoven's Ode to Joy. Tony wants his pipe back, but Anton asks him how he knows it's his pipe if he has no memory. Once again, a fair question. Anton does some funny magic tricks with the pipe, instead of giving it to Tony. I love this scene because Andrew Garfield said that Heath Ledger would always say, let's have some fun with this one before every take. And you genuinely get the vibe that Ledger and Garfield are having fun with this scene. The scene even ends with Anton saying this was fun with a big dumb grin on his face. Getting back to the overarching story of Parnassus wanting control over his daughter, he tells Percy about how he's unhappy that Anton is in love with Valentina. but he thinks Tony would be good for her, but he says he'll give her hand to whoever helps him with getting the 5 souls, as if he would have any say in who ends up with her. So we jump to another show, and the group has gone from just kind of ripping people off to now committing full-on crimes because Tony tries to put 2 girls in the Imaginarium at the same time. Anton says that it can't handle 2 at the same time. Weak. He just grabs the one girl and carries her into the Imaginarium despite her not wanting to go alone. Percy shoots this cannon thing when the audience starts an uproar. They drive the wagon away in an attempt to kidnap the woman. Despite going into the Imaginarium, the woman gets out, jumps off the wagon, and is greeted by Mr. Nick. Once again, it's great how he just appears when you don't expect him. Like, all this chaos with the wagon is going on, and then it's like, oh, the devil is here too. You really feel for Anton here because his attempt to steal a soul didn't work, and now Percy is yelling at him for not being good help when fixing the wagon. Tony questions Anton about Parnassus. How, if he can read minds, why is he doing this and not controlling the world? It reminded me how Chris Angel recently talked about psychics and questioned that if they were real, why are they pretending to talk to dead people instead of getting tomorrow's lottery numbers? It's all just a scam to get people's money. But Anton says Parnassus doesn't want to rule the world. He wants the world to rule itself. Parnassus continues to see Valentina as a little girl and says that she can never understand love the way he has. He tells her about her mother. He fell in love with her, but how could someone 1,000 years old woo someone like that? So he does what anybody else would do and jumps off a cliff. But since he's immortal, Mr. Nick catches him. Terry Gilliam and cinematographer Nicola Pecorini were inspired by Norwegian artist Odd Nerdrum during Gilliam's 2005 film The Brothers Grimm. This scene in particular was inspired by Nerdrum's paintings. I couldn't find a particular painting that matched this one, but the color and the vibes are all here. Parnassus is seen riding in a gondola with Valentina's mother, where we learn that Mr. Nick granted Parnassus mortality, but at what price? Well, on the gondola, there is an Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, and they float towards Mr. Nick and this hellish-looking landscape. Parnassus falls asleep, and we don't get to find out what happened yet. Keep in mind Valentina warned us about him never finishing his stories. Tony comes to the conclusion that Parnassus needs a new show and a new audience, for the same reason why I've loved The Wagon the whole movie, because it's not modern. While I love how it doesn't fit in with absolutely anything else in this movie, I guess it's hard to have a successful theater trope when it's stuck in the past. The secret is not to hide and be bold. So, interesting question. If you were a secret society controlling the world, would you hide or be bold and plaster your messages all over the movie? Weirdly enough, the next conversation with Parnassus and Valentina is about how coincidences aren't real. They come to the conclusion to gamble on Tony and let him help. This is a big step in Parnassus seeing his daughter as an adult because he actually takes her opinion into consideration. The transformation the group goes on is wild. They have this black and white checkered wall. Anton, who actually had to be convinced to stay, is now dressed as a woman sitting on a pile of apples. Percy is unfortunately in blackface, which the movie could definitely do without, especially because he's playing the less fortunate one of the group. Other than that, they definitely look like a more professional theater trope. If you just covered Percy with how he looked earlier in the movie, it would probably be my favorite shot in the movie. Tony took Anton's job and talks to the audience. He makes it clear that they're not trying to take people's money, they're trying to give. They have also moved from the poor parts of town to what seems like a wealthier place. This scene is a showcase of how great Heath Ledger was. Everyone already knew it, but this monologue here is just fantastic. He asked the audience if they could put a price on their dreams, and how he ran from his, but was saved by Parnassus. This causes a large crowd to want to try the Imaginarium, but a woman who thinks Percy is a child and wants to adopt him gets chosen to go into the Imaginarium. Tony follows her in, and her imagination creates a world filled with fancy shoes and pearls. Rich old lady stuff. In the mirror, she sees herself as a thinner, younger version of herself. So what this movie is known for is the 4 actors who went on to play Tony. The death of Heath Ledger shut down production for a few months and almost stopped the film entirely. An alternate plan was to use effects to have Tony's appearance transform into another character, similar to the effects used in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. The final decision was to rewrite a bit of the final hour of the movie, and whenever Tony enters the Imaginarium, his appearance would change. Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell would portray the character of Tony in the Imaginarium scenes. A respectful, unique, and very successful way of dealing with the tragedy that was on their hands. There are some evidence that Heath Ledger actually did get the chance to play Tony in the Imaginarium, but Xander Gladish plays Tony under the mask in the Imaginarium, and he actually looks a lot like Heath Ledger with the mask on, so it kind of tricks you into thinking that Heath Ledger is still there. Then when he takes the mask off, out pops Johnny Depp. The woman telling him, "I always known that you would look just like this," kind of sells the face change too. Johnny Depp looks confused when he sees himself as well, which adds to it. Tony is haunted by visions of Valentina, while him and the woman dance. Mr. Nick presents the woman with a cheap motel for a one-night stand with Tony, and Tony presents her the gondola. There's a weird reference to Rudolph Valentino, James Dean, and Princess Diana, people who have died but are immortal and have legacies that live on. She makes the choice to go on the gondola, but she has to give Tony all of her possessions, because it has to be pure. Mr. Nick becomes a serpent from the end of the river, which is such an awesome scene here. An eerie line follows as Tony tells her, "Nothing's permanent, not even death." And this coming from the guy who is playing Heath Ledger, it's just haunting. Tony is forced out of the Imaginarium, now played by Heath Ledger once again. And he's confused as to how any of that even happened. Parnassus just tells him that it was nothing. The woman swings out of the Imaginarium and gives Parnassus a blank check. It's a hit, and everybody wants to try the Imaginarium. I wish it was clearer in the explanation of Parnassus winning these souls. Like, the woman takes the gondola and voila, he has their soul, I guess. Okay. But nonetheless, he gets 3 more, and he has 4 out of the 5 as Mr. Nick watches on. Before he can get the 5, Tony's past reveals itself, and we find out that he's wanted by some mobsters, which is why he was hanging when we found him. It's very neat how a lot of the characters in this movie aren't 100% good or 100% bad. Like, it's not just black and white, there's a very gray area. The good characters are flawed. Tony flees into the Imaginarium where the mob follows him. This world is inspired by Grant Wood's painting, Young Corn. The mob is greeted by a woman trying to make them rich, telling them to reach for the clouds, as there are many people climbing really tall ladders into the clouds, so that was meant quite literally. Jude Law now plays Tony in the Imaginarium. He probably looks the least like Heath Ledger, but he does pull off the look of the crazed businessman, I guess. He sees newspapers of him being praised instead of him being the scum of the earth in the real world. He breaks the steps on the ladder and uses them as stilts, which, I mean, it doesn't sound possible at all to use 100-foot tall stilts, but once again, it's not a movie that's trying to be realistic. It's funny that the only thing stopping the stilts is the fact that it gets caught on a branch. Luckily, Anton is here to stop his fall with his very cushioned dress. The mob catches him, and they think they have the wrong person because he looks totally different. This is another great way the movie acknowledges the change in actor without taking you out of the movie. But he ends up having the same marks on his head as Tony when he was hung, so the jig is up. This scene will always live in my head when Anton walks up to the mob trying to save Tony. He pulls off his wig and says,
"Well, maybe we can settle this with some fisticuffs."
So one of the guys gets him to smell a flower, which confuses him somehow, and Tony puts the pipe in his mouth that helped him survive his first hanging. If you thought this movie wouldn't have a musical number, then you're wrong. It's a bunch of police officers in skirts singing about joining the fuzz and using their violence for good. Obviously, this is a choice presented by Dr. Parnassus. Mr. Nick presents his option of this old woman who the mob calls Mama. Also, the fuzz mooning them scared them away. I don't know, I think you could make the case for this movie kind of jumping the shark once it gets to the Imaginarium stuff. On the other hand, I love the idea of literally anything and everything being possible in the Imaginarium. It's weird because I wouldn't blame anyone for not liking the back half of this movie because it's so different from what was established. The most important thing is that Parnassus was leading 4 souls to 0. But Mr. Nick just captured 4 souls, so now we're tied. The 2016 Golden State Warriors actually don't have the worst blown lead of all time. This is actually the first time Anton notices that Tony's appearance had changed, and Tony is searching for a way back to the ladders because he claims he felt like his true self. Anton questions why a Russian mob would be after him and accuses Tony of stealing money from them. Once again, we're dealing with characters in a gray area and not necessarily good or bad. But we'll later come to find out Tony is 100% bad, so stay tuned. I know this is kind of a cop-out, cheap answer, but Tony literally says that the symbols on his head are something satanic. And I think the movie telling us that actually means that they don't mean anything. Like, all the satanic symbols and hoopla don't actually have a deep meaning. And if you're trying to hide something, I don't understand telling people what you're hiding, you know? So Tony confesses that he loaned money from those men for his children's charity, but he didn't know that they laundered dirty money through the charity. Anton and Tony have a deep talk, in a deep bonding moment where Anton thanks him for telling the truth, only for Tony to ask about the ladders again and ruin everything. I really love this shot where they walk through the mirror where it looks like this weird foil curtain thing. So we're back to the wagon. They've locked Tony upstairs, and there's a disconnect between Valentina and the rest of the group. Valentina is won over by the money and the possessions that Tony has brought in, but Anton claims that everything was pure before Tony got here. Also, Tony has remembered Valentina's birthday, and Anton hadn't. Mr. Nick knocks on the door of the wagon, and Parnassus tells them to not answer it. Percy's begging for them to answer because it's not in his nature to not answer the door or the phone is frickin' hilarious. Mr. Nick is pretty much here to taunt Parnassus about how he only has 1 hour left to save Valentina. It's very interesting how this version of the devil is very into toying with Parnassus as if he wants to make him miserable, but could also be like a symbol for Parnassus realizing that his daughter is about to turn 16 in an hour. Because Mr. Nick makes it clear that he's not necessarily trying to win the game, and is giving Parnassus every possible chance to win. Parnassus comes clean to Valentina. He is actually 1,000 years old, he is actually immortal, and he made a deal with the devil. Back to the story that was unfinished earlier. Valentina's mother got pregnant at 60 years old and died during childbirth, which raises the question if Valentina was a miracle or a mistake, and Parnassus said it's the best mistake he's ever made. Parnassus pretty much loses everyone here, because Valentina learns that she's about to belong to the devil, Anton follows her, and Percy gets kicked out for pretty much disagreeing with Parnassus. Tony takes to it to set up the Imaginarium to save Valentina by sacrificing himself, which he probably just wants to go back to the ladders because he's a scumbag, and he needs Parnassus to be in a trance for the mirror to work. When he steps through the mirror, he's still Heath Ledger, and it didn't work. Valentina made her way back, and is still flipping shit. Lily Cole is really doing a great job at her performance here. Tony convinces Valentina to follow him into the Imaginarium, to get her out of this darkness and into the light. It's one of the most predictable twists ever. Tony is revealed to be even worse than we thought, and he actually stole organs from orphans and sold them to rich people. It's kind of weird seeing Tony as this evil character because he's been so likable for most of the movie, but I guess that's the point, and probably even why his character wears a mask. Like, he's such a bad guy that the devil didn't even like him, and didn't even know about his evil doings. Tony injures Anton and tells him not to believe everything he reads in the newspapers, and he sneaks into the Imaginarium with Valentina. Colin Farrell steps into the role of Tony here, and Lily says that she always thought he'd look like this, since she's always fantasized about the family in the magazine, where Colin Farrell is the father. They're floating on the same gondola that Parnassus and Valentina's mother were on. I didn't mention it earlier, but I want to point out how weird it is seeing Parnassus being all lovey-dovey with Valentina's mother, considering it's the same actress that plays his daughter. Odd choice, and I don't like it. It's implied that Tony and Valentina sleep together, but we transition to night, and Valentina is singing That's Amore, which Anton was singing in the wagon earlier. So perhaps Anton is still on her mind, despite telling Tony that she loves him. They see a crying child. We see the difference in the two characters because Tony sees it as a choice, and Valentina says it's not a choice to help a crying child. Tony's dreams turn him into being a philanthropist, loved by many. The foundation is called Suffer the Little Children, and they sing about how they've suffered for our sins. Weird, creepy vibes. Anton appears as a child to warn Valentina about Tony and reveals the whole selling organ thing to her. Tony attacks Anton and then hits Valentina when she tries to get him off of Anton. So 1, he's selling organs, 2, he attacked a child, and 3, he attacked a woman. When Anton tries to tell everyone in attendance about Tony, he gets attacked again, and this time everyone sees Tony attacking a child. The building begins to break apart, symbolizing Tony's false life crumbling. Valentina tries to save Anton as he's falling off the side, but he transforms into an adult and she drops him after he says what we've all known and confesses his love for Valentina. Parnassus pulls in this desert world on what seems like a curtain. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's kind of like a Looney Tunes thing. Tony is able to flee into it while the mob chases after him and tramples Parnassus. The paramedic with a stutter tells Valentina that he's dead. Drunk. But she doesn't hear him say drunk. This movie only had a $30 million budget, and I can't help but wonder how much better scenes like Valentina running through mirrors would look if this had a higher budget. Valentina is presented with her choice. A doorway for his and a doorway for hers. Mr. Nick pops out. It doesn't take much convincing. They agree that she's a selfish bitch, only fit for hell. Valentina then dances with him, literally dancing with the devil. And she chooses Mr. Nick. If you thought that was anticlimactic, It's played off that way in the movie too, as Mr. Nick is disappointed that he won so easily. Mr. Nick tells Parnassus that it wasn't what he had in mind. They're watching over Tony as he's chased by the mob, and Mr. Nick says that he doesn't understand the satanic symbols on Tony's head, and he was never into black magic, further confirming my theory that this isn't some Illuminati-filled movie. Mr. Nick is so unfulfilled with winning the game in such an anticlimactic way that he says if Parnassus helps him kill Tony, he'll give him Valentina back. Tony climbs a mountain and is presented with a noose. The setup is essentially the same setup as the Hangman card. He's going to use a golden pipe to survive another hanging, but Parnassus appears willing to make yet another deal with the devil. He does magic with the pipe, like Anton did earlier, and he continues his trend of giving people a decision. He has 2 pipes. One is real and will help Tony survive. One is fake and won't work. It seems like Parnassus has an unlimited supply of fake pipes. He made one that already broke. He has one in his mouth that breaks. He spits one out, and he also has the real pipe. 3 frickin' pipes in this guy's throat. I'm impressed. But yeah, the pipe that Tony takes from Parnassus is a fake. There's a lot of anticlimactic stuff here in the last act. Tony never really has an arc that saves his character. He just dies, and that's that. And Parnassus won the bet, won Valentina back, but Mr. Nick tells him he doesn't know where she's at. He plays it off as, how should he know where she's at when Parnassus is her father? Mr. Nick just kind of leaves, and Parnassus is left to find his daughter, wherever she is. In Tom Waits' music video for his song God's Always on Business, he uses a black umbrella, and here he is, Mr. Nick, floating away with a black umbrella. Parnassus searches the Imaginarium for Valentina. This is a symbol for having an adult child that is just out living life and you have no idea where they're at. Parnassus is given the option of high road or low road. He begs for no more choices. We cut to Parnassus years later, still begging, but now for money on the streets. Valentina comes across him, not even noticing who he is. Parnassus follows her to find out that she's with Anton and they have a child together. Percy convinces him to leave them be and let them live their own lives. So we leave our characters as Parnassus and Percy are selling toy models of the Imaginarium, which are very cool and I want one. Mr. Nick is still around and offering nuns an apple, a reference to the original sin. A kid asks Percy if the Imaginarium comes with a happy ending, and Percy tells him he can't guarantee that. We have seen that happy endings aren't guaranteed in the Imaginarium, but thinking of this movie, Mr. Nick is still on the prowl as Percy tells Parnassus to get back to work instead of taking another deal. And the title card, a film from Heath Ledger and Friends, hits like a ton of bricks. Like, this is it. This is the last movie he was ever a part of. Just not a happy ending. Very anticlimactic ending. And yeah, not a happy ending, which aren't guaranteed. When writing this analysis, I really noticed the difference in the first half and the second half of the film. Once the Imaginarium stuff starts picking up, it feels like a totally different film. I can't help but wonder if it would have flowed better without the death of Heath Ledger. But in some weird way it works because the movie feels more surreal once we step into the Imaginarium. Like I said before, I can totally understand somebody saying the back half of this film doesn't work as well as the first half. But it's a universe and a story that I love to get lost in. I love how Terry Gilliam was able to put together such a wild film, even when it seemed like everything was going against him. I'm not saying that just because people are passionate about a project they're working on that it makes it a great film, but you can genuinely feel the passion and care that the entire cast put into this film. And despite all the passion they put into it, Gilliam chose to put Heath Ledger's name on the film at the end. There's a very prominent theme and message throughout the career of Terry Gilliam, as well as the production of this film. Whether it's the devil trying to stop it, the death of a loved member of the team, or just people telling you can't, someone somewhere is telling a story, and you can't stop a story being told.